This week on Arizona Illustrated, Finding One's Family, the musical journey of Brian Lopez, rare plants of southern Arizona, and the DeGrazia Gallery in the sun. Welcome to Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. Do you ever wonder where you came from or how far back you can trace your family history? There are now more ways than ever to search and discover who your ancestors are and how you might connect with them. We spent time with one Tucsonan who's doing just that.
We're here at Tucson Medical Center in the cath lab recovery.
Are you warm enough?
We get patients directly from cath lab and from radiology post-procedure.
Stephanie Gelsonon is a registered nurse and has been working in the cath lab unit at TMC for 14 years.
We recover them from whatever sedation they got. Sometimes they get procedural sedation, sometimes general anesthesia. And if they have tubes in, we take those out, monitor them, try to make them comfortable afterwards. Okie dokie. I've enjoyed it. I enjoy taking care of people and meeting people. It's good. It's good work. Lift your head up after I have a look at your site. Looks good. Ready? And my grandmother was a nurse. She became a nurse when she was 54 years old. And that was after having 11 children and doing so many other things. I guess she kind of inspired me.
That inspiration around family ties has driven Stephanie to find out all she can about those who came before her.
The more you get into family history, the more you realize that there's more work to be done. There are more cousins to meet. It's kind of unending.
You brought everything you own, I think.
Stephanie conducts much of her research through the Family History Center. It is owned and operated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
So these are our two children.
There are 6 family history centers in southern Arizona. This one is on Tucson's northwest side.
This is my mom's dad.
We got together at another family history center here in town that's on the east side of town, and she showed me what she had. And she started telling me the stories of her family. Her family is really close. And she was at a really busy point in her life, and I said, well, let me help.
Oh my goodness. What is she, about 3?
Debbie Weitzel is a member of the church and occasionally volunteers as a consultant with the center.
So she was
Just a year.
She became her own family's historian when her father passed away.
All my relatives started sending me everything that they probably were sending him before.
The family history centers are open to the public, and all are welcome. There are numerous online databases and programs that can be accessed online at no charge, among them Ancestry.com
It was my great-great-grandfather.
and FamilySearch.org, a free service offered by the Mormon Church.
With the databases growing the way they are now, you may have been looking for somebody for years and never found any information, and then one day you try again, and there it is. So we've got Retha, infant son. There's a census record or a city directory record or something that names this person. And it's just like the world opens up.
And by then her last name was Lee.
Right. And there's Ruth.
For Stephanie, her quest to reach further into her family's past continues.
It gets a little complicated.
Sometimes mulatto, sometimes black.
Because of slavery.
It's about
On both sides of my family, there was slavery.
These friends first met when they both volunteered to index and digitize records from the Freedmen's Bureau. The Bureau, a government agency initiated by President Abraham Lincoln after the Civil War, was created to aid freed slaves during Reconstruction.
And it was intended to help people who had been slaves to transition to life as free people. Births, marriages, deaths, children in school, hospitalizations, court disputes, anything that these people were involved in that was reported through the Bureau was recorded, and these records were kept.
Those records are now available online, and more are coming, allowing African Americans to discover their ancestors and reunite with their families.
On a train. My mom's mother's father's mother lived to be 106 years old, and she was born in 1838, and so and she was a slave.
The stories in Stephanie's family have been passed down from generation to generation. Finding the truth in them is part of the search.
It's neat to have stories that you've heard corroborated, to know that you heard it right, that it was the truth, that it actually happened.
Her father, Hank Webster, now deceased, was a Chicago firefighter for 38 years. He was the oldest of 11 children, all born at home.
My dad had always said that there were two babies, both of them boys, who were born who hadn't lived for very long. But I think he lamented not being able to know the other brothers, because he would have had 3 brothers.
There's another infant son, and we don't know for sure where he fit, right?
Don't know, no.
And on this day, Stephanie and Debbie would find the records of the second infant son, born and deceased 1934.
1934.
We found him. We found him.
Just like, oh, Debbie, that's, oh.
They only lived 2 hours.
One day.
One day. And buried the second day.
To find this record of this little boy, this little baby who my dad saw. He would have been 10 years old when his little brother was born. It was very personal because the family was right there. So he was old enough to have been impacted by his little brother's birth and by his death.
He's a real person.
It's sad that, you know, he didn't get to have a longer life. And yet at the same time, it's kind of like he had an impact on is he having an impact on me right now? That, and I remember my dad, you know, just how much he loved his family. My mom loved her family. It just kind of ties us all together. You know, these thoughts of family members who've passed on, even these little babies that come for such a short time, that are loved and missed. And then my Aunt Betty, Becky, Nellie, and Nancy.
Oh, we're missing 3 then.
Singer-songwriter Brian Lopez calls Tucson home, but now he's an international recording star, touring venues throughout Europe and America. We sat down with him to take a look back and forward to see what might be next for one of Tucson's favorite sons.
Good evening, everybody. Tucson's in the heart and it's in the soul, and I'm proud to be where I'm from.
Lord, I'm having such a hard time.
It definitely finds its way into my music somehow, even if I try to block it. I'd rather be like a blank being on a blank planet, and if you hear my music, you don't really know. I'm Brian Lopez. I am a singer, songwriter, songster. How about songster? 1449 West Riverview in Barrio Savaco is where I grew up. West Side Tucson.
As I recall, it was my intention to bring us both down.
Oh man, it was simple. Life is so much simpler when you're a kid. There's a lot of sports, a lot of after-school rec. Academics and sports were pretty much it for a very, very long time.
You would not keep your weight on the ground.
But back in the day, we would go to like Davis Elementary or to Ross Scrooge and just play all day long. That's just really what brought joy to our lives. I was never the most athletic dude. I wasn't dunking on people. I was just the coach's son, super fundamental. I loved getting others involved. I would always count my assists. I never really counted my points. I was a point guard. I still am a point guard. But I spent most of my time downtown, staying at my Nana's house. She raised us, you know, with the folks working so much just to keep us afloat. And you're a kid, you don't understand like how rich or poor you might be. But we felt very rich, you know, in the soul and in the heart because we had so much love. And a big part of that was the matriarch of our family, was our Nana Julian. I found a bunch of vinyl at my Nana's house that belonged to my dad and his brothers. And there was like Black Sabbath I was really into. I remember getting Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart. I just like became engulfed into that whole Beatles scene. Then I started buying guitar magazines and my mom bought me a guitar, started doing little recordings in my house. And definitely loved like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, that whole Seattle grunge scene. When I was learning guitar, that was getting big. Those were all the songs I could find on the guitar magazines. They would have the tablature, so I could learn how to play Smells Like Teen Spirit in my house, and that kind of like changed my world. Now I could take all these songs that just seemed so amazing to me and flash forward to the future, and you start writing your own stuff.
Too young to fall asleep.
For me, I don't think I'd be anywhere today if it wasn't for my like formal training in music, you know, getting a classical guitar scholarship at the U of A and taking all the music theory courses, music history, going through that whole gauntlet. What they tell you is like sonic mastery. When you get through it finally and you start creating on your own, you realize there's no right or wrong way to do this. They wanted me to do it this way, and I almost believed it for a while. I'm glad I did it and was able to escape from it. To take a cue from Hal Gelb, my biggest mentor as far as another songwriter, he says that, you know, there's always songs inside of you, like you have them there. If you're an artist, like they're there. They just have to come out somehow.
It's just like in movies.
You start writing, you come up with something, a melody, or you know, you wake up in the middle of the night with a chord progression, and you just go from there, and you don't know if it's gonna be crap or if it's gonna be the best thing you've heard in a while from yourself.
And just
You can't just sit around being inspired all the time. I don't know any artists that just are successful because they're constantly inspired. Sometimes the flow is a lot easier, you know, it just comes naturally. You are inspired, or something triggers just a flicker where you say, aha, and then you sit down at a piano.
in movies, it's placed and scripted for the big But your signal, it's breaking up, and your static noise, it echoes on like our love.
He creates these incredible songs that obviously the technique and the song structure and the arrangements are very perfectly executed, but the content is coming from a very deep place.
Yes, your signal, it's breaking up.
You can write the saddest songs, you know, Pray for Rain, Static Noise, like it's really deep, heartfelt, soul-wrenching songs. This is the space we built out of necessity, Dust and Stone recording studio. I think I've probably spent more time with Brian than anyone in my life, just because we're on the road together for months on end.
Yeah, well, a lot of people think Gabe and I are like brothers.
Yeah, it's happened a lot. It's almost every time in the airport. You guys are brothers or what?
Just because we're always around together, always seemingly like on tour together, which is pretty much true because we both play in Giants and Sixa. And he usually will play in my band if I'm doing a solo tour where I have a full band. And a lot of the time I'll play with his band.
I think it's a very special drive and work ethic that he has that I think is unique to his upbringing, to his childhood, and could only be his. It could only come from being raised in a Mexican-American home in Tucson.
What do we have here? Hey, Rita. I'm the spark that started the fire in a place nobody knows.
It's been nice having him as a musical counterpart for all of this, because it's somebody you can go through the whole experience with, the ups and downs of this life. I mean, it's not easy to make a living. It's not easy holding relationships. It's not easy being away for so long. It's tough to be away, but then when I come home, sometimes it's tough for me not to be out on the road, just because that is a big part of my life. I mean, just to put it into perspective, it's days on end of carrying equipment, traveling long hours, doing this, that, emails, getting lighting engineers the right flight to this city. All this crap that they don't tell you is what you're really going to be doing 99% of the time.
Killer, she's a killer.
The performance, it's the initial spark that gets you in the game, right? I mean, that's why I'm here. That's why most people are here, because you get that rush. I mean, I've never done heroin, but I don't think heroin's got anything on performing live. You get on stage for those 50 minutes or an hour and a half, and it wipes the slate clean. It makes it worth it again, and you remember why you're in the game in the first place. Gosh, I wish writing music was just a series of writing the best song in your dream and then coming out of your dream and actually writing, but it doesn't. That's not how life works, is it? If it worked that way, then every time I meet my grandmother who's passed in a dream, I could pull her out of it and then, she'd still be here. But that's fortunately not how it works. So you have to visit it in your dream and do your best to grab what you had there so you can give it to everybody else. And that's my obligation as an artist.
Into the wide awake where I can feel. Into the wide awake where I can seal the deal.
Visit our webpage at azpm.org to watch and share videos from this episode. You'll also find stories from future programs. an easy way to submit your own story idea, an archive of past episodes of Arizona Illustrated, azpm.org. You're no doubt familiar with the saguaro, cholla, and mesquite, but how about Euphorbia abdelkuri, Welwitschia mirabilis, and of course, adenium? These are but a few of the rare plants nurtured by botanist Mark Dimmitt.
How do I describe my property? I don't call it a landscape because a landscape architect would freak out at what they do when they come here. They don't see any sense of design. I put the plant where I think it will grow the best. I'm a plant collector is what I am. There are a lot of people like me who we call ourselves plant freaks. And I like to say that there's no 12-step program to help us out of this addiction. I moved to Tucson in 1979 with a moving van full of plants. Today, my inventory is out of date, but I would estimate that I have about 8,000 to 10,000 plants in pots and probably a similar number in the ground. I call this my berry cage because I grow mostly various kinds of berries in here. I grow only thornless varieties of berries because I'm tired of shedding blood from my fruit. I give the extras to friends. That's I think the best thing I can do with them. I have 3 greenhouse areas for tropical plants that need climate control. Some people like flashy flowering tropicals. I like anything that's weird. I understand why they look that way. They're adapted to their environment. And to me, that enriches my experience of enjoying plants. This is a cactus from the Amazon. This is a hybrid that I really love because it's almost always in flower, so it puts on a great show whenever anybody comes to visit. My primary passion for the last 40 years has been hybridizing adeniums. By the time I figured out what it was, I was just obsessed with it because it had beautiful flowers and it had a beautiful twisted stem and a fat base. It had everything I like in a weird plant. And I'm one of the people who helped to introduce them, to popularize them in this country, and according to my friends in Asia, my first hybrids triggered the interest there too. So I'm kind of the grandfather of adenium horticulture. A lot of people call them desert roses, but I don't like that name, so just remember adenium. It's only 3 syllables, easy to learn. When you make a hybrid, you're making something that does not occur in nature, so you're the first one to see a new life form. So it's a lot of tedious work in between seeing 2 plants you'd like to cross and seeing the results a few years later. Patience and real dedication is necessary to do a collection like this, and very few people want to do that. Most people have other things to do in their lives. And I do too, but plants are number one. I'm very happy to be out here for days at a time without seeing or talking to another human being. And it's not that I don't have friends. I have a fair number of friends. They're almost all plant-related friends. And we get together and mostly talk about plants and a few other things at times. People think I've sacrificed my life for plants. Yeah, it's true. Basically, I don't do anything else. I need to be surrounded by beauty.
Artist Ettore Ted DeGrazia bought an isolated foothills property in the early 1950s. He designed and built a series of buildings scattered in the natural desert there. DeGrazia said, quote, "I wanted to build it so that my paintings would feel good inside." And for local architect Kevin Howard, it became a favorite place.
I was 5 when my kindergarten teacher taught us about the great artists of our time. One that captured my imagination was Ettore or Ted DeGrazia. When a visiting aunt gave a glowing review of one of my drawings, I simply remarked, "It's not as good as Ted DeGrazia." I didn't think about his work in the years that followed until, after some time in California, my wife and I returned to Arizona to attend the College of Architecture here at the U of A. We moved with our 3 children into a townhome across the street from his Foothills studio. I didn't notice, at the time, that the gallery in the sun sign I passed each day was connected to the famous artist. It was my boys who discovered the magic of this place while exploring the desert near our home. One night at dinner, my oldest son, who was 7 at the time, told me about this cool fort they had found. A Saturday exploring DeGrazia Studios became a family event. What I discovered there was beyond expectation. The textures, the colors, the whimsy, everything a building isn't supposed to be was all there. Unencumbered by the rules, this master artist had intuitively and vigorously incorporated raw material, use of light, forced perspective, and scale in a unique way. To call it a mere building doesn't seem quite right. It is a place in the desert, a retreat. I have returned there over the years to remind myself that the only limitation is our own imagination. There are other places in Arizona like it, such as Montezuma Castle, Arco Santi, and Frank Lloyd Wright's Taliesin West. Gallery in the Sun is one that we call our own right here in Tucson. It stands as an example of the sense of desire within us to create a place in the world where we feel at home and can be inspired by our surroundings.
Share a picture of your favorite place on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook with hashtag AZPM Favorite Places, or email us at favoriteplaces@azpm.org. We may use your location in a future segment. Thank you for joining us here on Arizona Illustrated. Next week, a story of loss, hope, and finding a new home. A rare mural by Ted DeGrazia. Music carved from the desert. And our favorite place, Congress Street. I'm Tom McNamara. See you next week.